The billionaire's daughter hadn't smiled in 8 months, paralyzed and broken after losing her mother in a tragic accident. Then one day, a homeless boy wandered into their garden. He had nothing but a pair of worn-out shoes and a wooden crate he slept in down by the pier. But when he saw her pain, he didn't ask for money. He simply started to dance. And she laughed for the first time since the tragedy. The billionaire witnessed everything. What happened next would change all of their lives in ways they never could have imagined. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe and hype, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. Jonathan Reed stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his study, watching the Pacific Ocean crash against the cliffs below. The sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, but he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, trapped in the same loop it had been stuck in for 8 months now. They called him the golden touch of California. Every project he invested in turned profitable. Tech startups, real estate ventures, green energy initiatives, everything Jonathan Reed touched seemed to multiply in value. Forbes had just ranked him among the top 50 wealthiest individuals in the state. His face appeared on magazine covers. Business schools studied his strategies. But none of that mattered anymore. Ocean Crest Estate sprawled across 3 acres of prime California coastline. The mansion boasted 12 bedrooms, a home theater, an Olympic-sized pool, and architecture that had won awards. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Rare paintings lined the walls. The wine cellar alone was worth more than most people's homes. Yet the house felt empty, hollow, like a beautiful shell with nothing living inside. Jonathan walked through the west corridor toward Emily's room. His footsteps echoed in the silence. The staff moved like ghosts through the house, speaking in whispers, careful not to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over Ocean Crest Estate since the accident. He found his daughter where she always was, sitting in her wheelchair by the garden-facing window. Emily's dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a soft blue cardigan over her dress, a blanket covering her legs. Her hands rested motionless in her lap. She was staring at the ocean. Always the ocean. "Hey sweetheart," Jonathan said softly, entering the room. "Mrs. Chen made your favorite tonight, chicken pot pie." Emily didn't turn. She continued gazing out at the water, her face expressionless. Jonathan's chest tightened. He'd seen that look for 8 months now, and it never got easier. This was the girl who used to dance through the house, who'd performed ballet in the living room for anyone who'd watch, who'd filled every room with laughter and energy. She'd been 9 years old and unstoppable. Then came that rainy evening in March, the car accident that took her mother and left Emily paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors had explained it clinically. Spinal cord injury, lower body paralysis, extensive physical therapy required. Possible partial recovery, but no guarantees. They'd laid out timelines and treatment plans and percentages like they were discussing a business proposal, not his little girl's life. But they hadn't mentioned this part. They hadn't warned him about the silence. About how Emily would withdraw so completely that sometimes Jonathan wondered if she was even present in her own body. She ate when reminded. She cooperated with the physical therapists. She answered direct questions with single words. But she didn't speak, she didn't smile, she didn't cry, she didn't seem to feel anything at all. "I thought maybe we could eat dinner together tonight." Jonathan tried again. "Out on the terrace? The weather's perfect." "Okay," Emily said quietly, still not looking at him. Jonathan felt that familiar ache in his throat. He'd spent decades negotiating billion-dollar deals, commanding boardrooms, making decisions that affected thousands of employees. He'd built an empire through sheer force of will and intelligence. But he couldn't reach his own daughter. He'd hired the best therapists money could buy. Child psychologists, grief counselors, physical rehabilitation specialists who'd worked with Olympic athletes. They came to Ocean Crest Estate twice a week, sometimes more. They worked with Emily patiently, professionally. Nothing changed. The therapists told him she was processing trauma, that grief in children often manifested as withdrawal, that he needed to be patient, to give her time, to maintain routine. Jonathan was tired of being patient. He wanted his daughter back. "I'll have them set up outside then," he said, backing toward the door. 20 minutes. Okay. He stood there a moment longer hoping she might turn, might say something more. But Emily just continued staring at the ocean, her small hands motionless in her lap, her face as still as stone. Jonathan closed the door quietly behind him, and leaned against the wall in the hallway. He rubbed his eyes, suddenly exhausted. The weight of the last 8 months pressed down on him like a physical thing. He'd lost his wife in that accident. The love of his life gone in an instant. But at least Sarah's suffering had ended. At least she was at peace. Emily was still here, still trapped in a body that wouldn't work and a mind that had shut itself off from the world. And Jonathan had no idea how to help her. He walked slowly back to his study, past the photographs that lined the walls. Emily at 5, missing her front teeth, laughing at something off camera. Emily at 7, in her first ballet recital costume, beaming with pride. Emily at 8, holding a trophy from her school's science fair, Sarah's arm around her shoulders. Jonathan couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Emily smile. Couldn't remember the sound of her laugh. Those things felt like they belonged to a different lifetime, a different world that had ended on a rainy March evening. He reached his study and poured himself a glass of whiskey, even though he rarely drank. The amber liquid burned going down, but it didn't help. Nothing helped. Through the window the ocean continued its eternal rhythm, waves crashing against the cliffs. The sun had nearly set now, leaving the sky bruised with purple and gray. Jonathan stood there alone in his multi-million-dollar mansion, surrounded by everything money could buy, and felt completely powerless. Success meant nothing if he couldn't bring his daughter back to life. All his wealth, all his influence, all his business acumen, useless. He would have traded every dollar, every property, every investment for just one real smile from Emily. For one moment of genuine joy to break through that terrible suffocating silence. But he didn't know how to make that happen. And for the first time in his adult life, Jonathan Reed had no plan, no strategy, no solution. He just had hope, fading a little more each day. The morning fog rolled in thick over Long Beach Pier, turning everything gray and damp. Jaden pulled his torn jacket tighter around his thin frame, and tried to ignore the gnawing hunger in his stomach. He'd slept in the wooden crate again last night, wedged between the fish market and the souvenir shop. It wasn't comfortable, but it was better than being completely exposed to the wind. He was 12 years old, though most people guessed younger. Living on the streets had a way of stunting growth. His jeans were too short, his sneakers held together with duct tape, and his jacket had belonged to someone else before he'd found it in a donation bin. But Jaden had something that kept him alive out here, something that made people notice him, even when they tried not to see the homeless kid lurking around the pier. He could dance. Not the formal kind of dancing they taught in studios. Jaden had never taken a lesson in his life, but he'd watched street performers, studied videos playing in shop windows, and created his own style, a wild, energetic mix of popping, locking, comedy, and pure improvisation that made people stop and stare, and more importantly, it made them smile, which meant sometimes they'd drop a few coins in his cup. Jaden stretched his stiff muscles as morning light began to break through the fog. The fish market workers were already unloading their catches, shouting to each other in Spanish and Vietnamese. The smell of the ocean mixed with fish and salt and diesel fuel. It wasn't pleasant, but it was familiar. This pier had been home for almost 2 years now. "Hey kid, you sleeping there again?" Jaden looked up to see Marcus, one of the fishmongers, pointing at him with a thick finger. But the man wasn't angry. He never really was. "Just resting, Mr. Marcus," Jaden called back. Marcus shook his head but reached into a cooler and pulled out a wrapped sandwich. "Here, somebody ordered this but never picked it up yesterday. Better than nothing." Jaden scrambled over, his stomach already growling at the sight of food. Thank you so much. Yeah. Just don't let the health inspector see you hanging around my shop, all right? And stay away from those punk kids who were here last night. They're bad news." Jaden nodded seriously. He knew exactly which kids Marcus meant. The gang that hung around the north end of the pier, older teenagers who thought it was fun to hassle anyone weaker than them. Jaden had learned to disappear when they showed up. He took the sandwich to his spot behind the crate and ate slowly, making it last. The bread was a little stale, but the ham and cheese inside tasted like heaven. When had he last eaten? Yesterday afternoon, he thought. Someone had bought him French fries after he danced for 15 minutes straight. That was how his life worked. Dance, make people happy, maybe get food or a few dollars. Sleep in the crate, avoid trouble. Repeat. His mom had died when he was 8, overdose. Jaden barely remembered her face anymore, just vague impressions of dark hair and a smell like cigarettes and cheap perfume. His dad had disappeared before that, or maybe after. Time blurred together when you were a kid trying to survive alone. There had been a shelter for a while. Then a foster home that didn't work out. Then another shelter. Then somehow Jaden had ended up here on the streets, and staying here seemed easier than going back into the system. At least out here, nobody pretended to care while treating you like a burden. But Jaden wasn't bitter, he couldn't afford to be. Bitterness made you hard, made you mean, made you like those gang kids who hurt people for fun. Jaden had decided early on that he'd rather keep dancing, keep making people smile, keep finding little moments of joy wherever he could. Because when he danced he didn't feel small, he didn't feel invisible, he didn't feel like the homeless kid everyone tried not to look at. When he danced he felt alive. By mid-morning, the pier was filling with tourists. Jaden positioned himself near the carousel, where families with young children gathered. Kids always loved watching him dance. Parents felt guilty if their children laughed at his performance, but they didn't drop anything in his cup. Jaden started with his robot routine, moving in jerky mechanical motions that made a little girl squeal with delight. Then he shifted into popping, making his body wave like it was boneless. A small crowd formed. Someone pulled out a phone to record. "Check out this little kid, he's amazing." Jaden transitioned into comedy, pretending to trip over his own feet, catching himself at the last second, making exaggerated surprised faces. The crowd laughed. A few dollars landed in his cup. He kept going, feeding off their energy, making up new moves on the spot. This was what he lived for. These moments when people saw him, really saw him, and didn't look away in discomfort or pity. When they watched his dancing and forgot he was homeless, forgot he was just a kid with nowhere to go. When he was simply a performer making them happy. After 20 minutes the crowd dispersed. Jaden counted his earnings. $7.35. Not bad for a morning. He could get a decent meal with that if he was careful. But instead of heading to the taco stand, Jaden found himself walking north, away from the pier toward the part of town where normal people lived. Where houses had yards and families sat together at dinner tables and kids his age went to school. He knew he shouldn't go up there. Rich people didn't like seeing street kids in their neighborhoods. But something pulled him today, a restlessness he couldn't quite name. Jaden walked for over an hour, following the coast road as it climbed into the hills. The houses got bigger. The cars got nicer. The streets got cleaner. He passed gated communities with security guards who watched him suspiciously but didn't stop him. He was just a kid taking a walk. Nothing illegal about that. And then he saw it. Ocean Crest Estate sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, surrounded by walls and perfectly manicured gardens. Through the iron gates, Jaden could see the mansion, white stone and glass, elegant and massive like something from a movie. The gardens were full of flowering trees and shaped hedges. A fountain splashed somewhere inside. Jaden had never seen anything so beautiful. He stood outside the gates for a long time, just staring. Wondering what it would be like to live in a place like that. To have walls protecting you from the world instead of leaving you exposed to it. To sleep in a real bed instead of a wooden crate. To never worry about where your next meal would come from. But mostly Jaden wondered what kind of people lived there. Were they happy? Did they know how lucky they were? Did they ever think about kids like him, out here with nothing? The sun was starting to set. Jaden knew he should head back to the pier before dark. The streets got dangerous at night, and he'd be in trouble if he got lost up here in the rich neighborhoods. But he took one more long look at Ocean Crest Estate, memorizing the way the evening light turned the white stone golden, the way the garden seemed to glow in the dusk. Someday, he told himself. Someday he'd have a place to belong to. Maybe nothing as fancy as this. But somewhere safe. Somewhere warm. Somewhere that felt like home. Jaden turned and started the long walk back to Long Beach Pier, to his wooden crate and his uncertain tomorrow. He didn't know that in just a few days he'd be back at those gates, and everything would change. Emily sat in her wheelchair in the garden, positioned exactly where Maria had left her an hour ago. The afternoon sun was warm on her face, but she barely noticed. She barely noticed anything anymore. The garden at Ocean Crest Estate was beautiful. Roses climbed trellises, jasmine scented the air. A stone path wound through beds of lavender and sage. From her spot near the fountain, Emily could see past the gates, down the hillside, all the way to the ocean. She used to run through this garden. She used to dance on the lawn, practicing her ballet positions on the grass, pretending the whole world was her stage. That felt like it had happened to someone else. A different girl in a different life. Now she just sat, and stared. And felt nothing. Sometimes Emily wondered if the nothing would ever end. If she'd feel sad or happy or angry or anything again. But wondering took energy, and she didn't have much of that anymore. She heard a sound near the south wall, a rustling in the hedges. Emily turned her head slightly, more out of habit than curiosity. Probably a bird. Or maybe one of the gardeners. But it wasn't a bird or a gardener. A boy squeezed through a gap in the hedge where the iron fence didn't quite reach the ground. He was skinny, dressed in clothes that didn't fit right, with dark hair sticking up in odd directions. He looked around quickly, nervously, like he knew he shouldn't be here. Emily should probably call for help. That's what she was supposed to do if a stranger appeared. But she didn't. She just watched as the boy crept further into the garden, moving quietly along the edge of the flower beds. He hadn't seen her yet. Emily sat very still, partially hidden by the fountain. Part of her wanted to remain invisible. Part of her, a very small distant part, was curious. The boy stopped near a rose trellis and looked back at the mansion. His face was thin, but his eyes were bright. He couldn't have been much older than Emily, maybe a year or two. His sneakers were falling apart, held together with tape. Then he saw her. They both froze, staring at each other across the garden. Emily waited for him to run. That's what made sense. He was trespassing. He'd been caught. But he didn't run. Instead he looked at her wheelchair, then at her face, then at her hands, motionless in her lap, and something shifted in his expression. Not pity exactly. More like recognition, like he understood something without being told. "Hey," the boy said softly. "I'm not here to steal anything or cause trouble. I wanted to see the garden. I'll leave." Emily should tell him to go. Should call for help. Should do something. But what came out was, "You're not from around here." It wasn't a question. The boy's clothes, his worn-out shoes, the cautious way he moved, he was clearly from somewhere very different than Ocean Crest Estate. "No," he admitted. "I'm from the pier. Down in Long Beach. Sometimes I walk up here. I saw this place and I thought." He trailed off, looking embarrassed. "I'll go." "Wait." The word surprised Emily as much as it seemed to surprise the boy. She hadn't wanted to say anything more. Hadn't wanted to engage. But something made her continue. "Why do you walk all the way up here?" The boy shrugged, still keeping his distance. "It's nice, quieter than the pier. And the view," he gestured at the ocean beyond the cliffs. "You can see forever from up here." Emily followed his gaze to the water. She'd stared at that view for 8 months and barely seen it. But hearing someone else mention it made her actually look. The Pacific stretched endlessly, deep blue meeting lighter blue at the horizon, waves catching the afternoon sun. "Yeah," she said quietly. "You can." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then the boy shifted his weight, and Emily noticed how thin he was. How his jacket hung loose on his frame. How there was dirt under his fingernails, and a smudge on his cheek. "You live down at the pier?" she asked. "Sort of, yeah, with your family." "No family, just me." The way he said it, casual, matter of fact, like it was no big deal, made Emily's chest feel tight. She wanted to ask more, but didn't know how without sounding like she was pitying him. The boy seemed to sense her discomfort. "It's okay, I mean it's not great, but it's okay. I get by." "How?" He grinned then, and his whole face transformed. "I dance." "You dance?" "Yeah, street performing." I make up routines and people give me money sometimes. Or food. It works out. He paused, studying her face. You look sad. Like really sad. Emily felt something crack inside her chest. Nobody had said it that directly before. Everyone tiptoed around it, using careful words. Processing trauma, adjusting to change. Working through grief, but this boy just said it plain. You look sad. I am sad, Emily heard herself say. The words felt strange in her mouth. She hadn't admitted that out loud since the accident. My mom died, and I can't walk anymore. The boy's expression softened. That's rough, really rough. He was quiet for a moment, then said, my mom died too. Few years back. I'm sorry. Me too. About yours, I mean. He took a few steps closer, no longer looking like he was about to bolt. The not walking thing, is that permanent? Maybe, the doctors don't know. My spine got hurt in the accident. Does it hurt now? No. I can't feel much of anything below my waist. The boy nodded slowly, processing this. Then unexpectedly, he said, you want to see something that might make you feel a little less sad, just for a minute. Emily didn't know how to answer that. Nothing had made her feel less sad, since March. But there was something about this strange boy, this trespasser, who admitted he lived at the pier and danced for money, that made her curious. Okay, she said. The boy's grin returned. He stepped back, giving himself space on the lawn. All right, watch this. And then he started to dance. It wasn't like any dancing Emily had ever seen. Not ballet with its precise positions and graceful movements. This was wild and loose, and completely unexpected. The boy's body moved in impossible ways, popping and locking, jerking like a robot, then flowing like water. He spun and dropped and caught himself. He made funny faces, acted out little scenarios, pretended to fight invisible opponents. It was ridiculous, completely silly and over the top and absurd. And Emily felt her mouth curve upward. The boy kept going, encouraged by her smile. He did a move where he appeared to be walking in place while sliding backward. Then he pretended to be stuck in an invisible box, pushing against walls that weren't there. His expressions were exaggerated and comedic, his movements perfectly timed. A sound emerged from Emily's throat. Small at first, then louder. She was laughing. Actually laughing. The sound felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. But it kept coming, bubbling up from somewhere deep inside that she'd thought had gone completely numb. The boy finished with a dramatic spin and a bow, slightly out of breath but grinning. See? He said. Not so sad right now, are you? Emily shook her head, still smiling. Her cheeks felt strange. How long had it been since she'd used these muscles? That was she searched for the word. That was really cool. Thanks, I've been working on that routine. The invisible box thing is new. It was good. I liked, what the hell is going on here? Both children jumped. Emily's smile vanished instantly. Jonathan Reed was running across the lawn from the house, his face dark with anger. Maria was right behind him, looking terrified. Mr. Reed, I don't know how he got in. I was inside for just a moment. Get away from my daughter, Jonathan shouted at the boy. The boy stumbled backward, fear replacing his earlier confidence. I wasn't. I didn't hurt her, I was just Dad. Wait. Emily's voice came out louder than she'd spoken in months. Wait, please. Jonathan reached them immediately, positioning himself between Emily and the intruder. His hands were shaking with fury and fear. How had security failed? How had some street kid gotten past the gates, past the walls, right into his daughter's garden? It's okay, Dad. Emily said, her voice urgent. He wasn't doing anything wrong, he was just dancing. Dancing. Jonathan stared at his daughter, then at the boy, trying to make sense of this. Who are you? How did you get in here? The boy raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. I'm Jaden. I squeezed through the hedge. I'm sorry, I didn't think anyone was out here. I just wanted to see the garden, and then I saw her, and she looked sad, and I thought. You thought you'd trespass on private property? Dad, please. Emily's voice cracked. Please don't be angry. He made me laugh. That stopped Jonathan cold. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks were flushed. There was an expression on her face he hadn't seen in 8 months. She looked alive. He made you laugh, Jonathan repeated slowly. Yes, for the first time since Emily trailed off, but Jonathan understood. He turned back to the boy. Jaden. Now that the initial shock was fading, Jonathan could see him more clearly. Torn clothes, shoes that barely qualified as shoes, visible ribs beneath the thin jacket. This kid wasn't a threat. He was just a child who'd wandered somewhere he didn't belong. A child who'd somehow made Emily laugh when nobody else could. Where are your parents? Jonathan asked, his tone less harsh. Don't have any. I live down at Long Beach Pier. Alone. Jaden nodded. Jonathan felt Maria's sharp intake of breath behind him. He ran a hand through his hair trying to process this situation. His security had failed. A homeless child had gotten onto his property. That child had approached his daughter without permission or supervision, and Emily had laughed. Really genuinely laughed. Please don't call the police. Jaden said quietly. I'll leave, I won't come back. I promise. No. Emily reached toward her father, her hand actually moving with purpose for the first time in forever. Dad, please. Don't make him go. Emily, please. He wasn't hurting me. He was helping. Jonathan looked between his daughter and this strange boy, feeling the careful order of his controlled world shift beneath him. Every instinct said to remove the intruder, fix the security breach, restore proper boundaries. But Emily's eyes were pleading with him. And she hadn't pleaded for anything since the accident. Hadn't wanted anything. Hadn't cared about anything. What's your name again? Jonathan asked the boy. Jaden, sir. How old are you? 12. Almost 13. Jonathan was quiet for a long moment, aware that Maria and Emily were both watching him, waiting for his decision. The sun was lowering in the sky, casting long shadows across the garden. In the distance the ocean continued its eternal rhythm against the cliffs. All right. Jonathan finally said. You can stay, just for today, but you stay where I can see you, understand? No wandering around, no going in the house. Jaden's eyes widened. Really, really, and tomorrow we'll see. It wasn't a promise, it wasn't even a plan. But it was something. A crack in the wall Jonathan had built around himself and Emily since the accident. And for the first time in 8 months, Jonathan Reed felt something that might have been hope. Jonathan stood on the balcony overlooking the garden, watching Jaden teach Emily some kind of hand-clapping game. The boy sat cross-legged on the grass while Emily remained in her wheelchair, but she was leaning forward, engaged, her hands moving with more coordination than Jonathan had seen in months. He didn't know what to make of this situation. Part of him, the father part, the protective part, wanted to send Jaden away immediately. Have security escort him back to wherever he'd come from, and fix the hole in the hedge he'd crawled through. This was dangerous. Irresponsible. What did they really know about this kid? What if he was casing the property? What if there were other people involved? But another part of him, the part that had been drowning in helplessness for 8 months, couldn't ignore what he'd witnessed. Emily had smiled, she'd laughed. She'd protested when Jonathan tried to send Jaden away. She'd cared about something. Maria appeared beside him on the balcony, carrying a tray with sandwiches and lemonade. I made some food for them, she said quietly. That boy looks half-starved. Jonathan nodded, still watching the scene below. What do you think? About him? Maria set the tray on a nearby table. I think he's a child who needs help, and I think Miss Emily is happier than she's been since the accident. We don't know anything about him. We know he made her laugh. That's more than the fancy therapists have managed. Jonathan couldn't argue with that. He watched as Maria brought the food down to the garden. Jaden's eyes went wide at the sight of the sandwiches, and he started eating with the controlled desperation of someone who never knew where the next meal would come from. Emily picked at hers, but she was eating more than usual, distracted by whatever story Jaden was telling between bites. Jonathan's phone buzzed. A text from Richard, his business partner. Board meeting moved to Thursday. You good with that? He stared at the message. A week ago, that meeting would have been the most important thing on his calendar. Now it felt completely irrelevant. What did quarterly projections matter when his daughter had just experienced her first moment of joy in 8 months? Fine, Jonathan texted back, then silenced his phone. Down in the garden, Jaden had finished eating and was demonstrating another dance move, something involving his shoulders moving independently from the rest of his body. Emily was watching with complete focus, occasionally glancing at her own shoulders as if wondering if she could do the same thing. Mr. Reed. Maria's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She'd come back up to the balcony. What do you want to do about the boy? Should I call social services? No, not yet. Jonathan surprised himself with the answer. Let's just see how today goes. And tomorrow? I don't know, Maria. I honestly don't know. As the afternoon wore on, Jonathan found himself drifting back to the garden. He couldn't stay away. He told himself he was supervising, making sure Emily was safe, keeping an eye on the situation. But really he was watching a miracle unfold. Emily was talking. Actually talking, in full sentences, asking Jaden questions about his life at the pier, about the dance moves he knew, about how he'd learned them. Jaden answered everything with a cheerful honesty that should have been heartbreaking. Stories about sleeping in a wooden crate, eating from dumpsters, avoiding gangs, but somehow he made it sound like an adventure rather than a tragedy. Don't you get scared? Emily asked. Living alone like that? Jaden shrugged. Sometimes, especially at night when it's really dark and cold, but then I just start dancing in my head, you know. Like I imagine routines and that makes me feel better. Dancing in your head. Yeah. I think about moves I want to try, or songs I've heard, or ways to make people laugh. It's like I'm not really alone if I'm thinking about performing for people. Emily was quiet for a moment. I used to dance, ballet. Really, that's cool. Can you show me something? I can't anymore because of, she gestured at her wheelchair. Oh, right. Sorry. It's okay. And she said it like she meant it, which was new. Usually when people brought up things Emily used to do, she shut down completely. Jaden thought for a moment, then said, well, you can still move your arms, right? Yeah, then you can still do part of it. Ballet has those arm positions, doesn't it? The graceful swooping things. Emily's face brightened slightly. Port de bras. That's what it's called. Can you show me one? Slowly, tentatively, Emily raised her arms. Her movements were shaky at first, uncertain, but then muscle memory seemed to take over, and her arms moved through first position, then second, then fifth. Not perfect, she was out of practice and her core strength had weakened, but recognizably ballet. That's beautiful, Jaden said, and he sounded like he meant it. See, you're still a dancer, just a different kind now. Jonathan watched from the balcony, his throat tight. Emily hadn't done any ballet positions since before the accident. Hadn't even mentioned dance. He'd assumed that part of her life was over, another casualty of that terrible March evening. But here she was, moving her arms through positions she'd practiced 1,000 times in the studio her mother had driven her to twice a week. Sarah had loved watching Emily dance. She'd recorded every recital, every practice session, filling their phones with videos of their daughter spinning and leaping and being magnificently, joyfully alive. Jonathan felt tears building and blinked them away. Not now, he couldn't break down now. As the sun started to set, casting golden light across the garden, Jaden stood up and brushed grass off his jeans. I should probably go, it's a long walk back to the pier, and I don't want to be out after dark. You're walking, all the way down to Long Beach? Emily asked. Yeah, it's okay. I'm used to it. That's like what, 2 hours? Jaden shrugged. About that. Maybe less if I run part of the way. Jonathan found himself walking down to the garden before he'd consciously decided to move. Both children looked up as he approached. You're not walking back tonight, Jonathan said. Jaden started to protest. I don't want to cause trouble. I can. I'll have my driver take you. It's almost dark and you're a kid alone on the highway. That's not safe. I do it all the time. Well, tonight you won't. Jonathan's tone left no room for argument. Come on. The car's in the garage. As they walked toward the house, Emily called out, Can he come back? Tomorrow? Jonathan stopped. He looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Jaden's surprised one. This was a decision point. He could feel it. Say no, maintain boundaries, protect his daughter from whatever complications this situation might bring. Or say yes and let this strange unexpected thing continue. Let Emily have this source of joy, however unusual it might be. If Jaden wants to, Jonathan said carefully, he can come back tomorrow. Between 4 and 6, the gate code is 8147. You can let yourself in. Jaden looked stunned. Seriously? But Jonathan fixed him with a firm stare. You stay in the garden. You don't bring anyone else. You don't take anything that isn't given to you. And if I find out you're taking advantage of this situation in any way, it's over. Understand? Yes, sir. I understand. I promise I wouldn't. Jaden seemed overwhelmed. Thank you. Really. Thank you so much. As Marcus the driver drove Jaden back to Long Beach in the Mercedes, Jonathan returned to the garden where Emily still sat, looking more alert than she had in months. Thank you, Dad, she said quietly. For what? For not sending him away. For letting him come back. Jonathan knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her small hand in his. Sweetheart, I'd do anything to see you smile again. Anything. If that kid makes you happy, then he's welcome here. He does make me happy. For the first time since Mom, her voice caught. For the first time in a long time. Jonathan squeezed her hand gently. Then we'll figure this out. Whatever it takes. That night, after Emily was in bed, Jonathan sat in his study with a glass of whiskey he didn't drink. He thought about Jaden walking hours along the highway to get home to a wooden crate at Long Beach Pier. About a 12-year-old kid surviving alone on the streets. About the system that had failed him so badly that homelessness seemed like his best option. He thought about Emily's laugh. About her arms moving through ballet positions. About the light in her eyes when she asked if Jaden could return. And he thought about what it meant to let this continue. The liability, the questions, the sheer irregularity of inviting a homeless child onto his property every day because that child could make his daughter smile. But mostly Jonathan thought about hope. For 8 months he'd watched Emily drift further and further away. Every therapy session that didn't help. Every doctor who couldn't promise improvement. Every morning she woke up silent and withdrawn. It all added to his sense of helpless desperation. Today, for the first time, he'd seen a spark. Small, tentative but real. Maybe it wouldn't last. Maybe tomorrow Jaden wouldn't show up, or Emily would retreat back into her shell, or this whole strange situation would collapse under the weight of its own impossibility. But maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of getting his daughter back. Jonathan set down his untouched whiskey and walked to the window. The ocean was dark now, just a vast blackness beyond the cliffs. Somewhere down there Jaden was settling into a wooden crate for the night, probably hungry, probably cold, but probably also thinking about tomorrow. About coming back to Ocean Crest Estate. About making a sad girl laugh. About being wanted somewhere. Tomorrow, Jonathan said quietly to his reflection. We'll see what happens tomorrow. And for the first time in 8 months, tomorrow felt like it might hold something other than more pain. The next day, at 3:45, Jonathan found himself standing at the front window like a nervous parent waiting for a first date to arrive. He felt ridiculous. He was a billionaire businessman, and here he was, anxious about whether a homeless 12-year-old would actually show up. He'll come, Maria said, appearing beside him with a tray of fresh-baked cookies. That boy's not going to pass up a place where he's welcome and fed. You made cookies, Miss Emily requested them, said Jaden would like them. Jonathan glanced toward the garden, where Emily sat in her wheelchair facing the gate. She'd asked to be positioned there an hour ago. She'd also asked Maria to help her put on her blue dress, the one with the flowers. She hadn't cared about what she wore since the accident. At 3:58, a figure appeared at the gate. Jaden punched in the code slowly, carefully, then slipped through when the gate swung open. He was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, clearly his only clothes, but he'd obviously tried to clean up. His hair was damp, like he'd washed it in a public bathroom somewhere, and his hands looked scrubbed. Emily waved from the garden. Jaden's face lit up, and he jogged over, careful to close the gate behind him. Jonathan watched from the window as the two children greeted each other. Emily was actually smiling before Jaden even started dancing. Just having him there seemed to lift her spirits. "What do you think he'll teach her today?" Maria asked. "I have no idea, but I guess we're about to find out." Over the next 2 weeks, a routine established itself. Jaden arrived every day at 4 o'clock sharp. He never missed a day. Rain or shine, he made the long journey from Long Beach to Pacifica Bay, let himself in through the gate, and spent 2 hours with Emily in the garden. And every day, Jonathan watched his daughter come back to life a little more. Jaden's repertoire of dance styles seemed endless. He taught Emily about popping and locking, breaking down each movement into steps she could understand. He showed her robot dancing, making mechanical movements that had her giggling. He did comedy routines, telling stories with his body about mishaps at the pier, the time he accidentally fell into a fishing net, the tourist who thought he was a statue, the seagull that stole his sandwich. But more importantly, he got Emily moving. "Okay, so you can't use your legs, right?" Jaden said one afternoon, sitting cross-legged in front of her wheelchair. "But you've got arms, and a core, and your head and neck. That's still a lot to work with." "I can barely hold myself up without the chair," Emily protested. "That's because you haven't been practicing. Here, try this." Jaden demonstrated a shoulder roll. "It's all about isolating the movement. Your shoulders can move without the rest of you, see?" Emily tried. At first nothing happened. Her shoulders barely shifted. "That's okay. Try again. Think about just your shoulders, nothing else." She tried again. A small movement. "There, see, you did it. That was tiny. So, tiny is how you start. Everything starts tiny." From his observation post on the balcony, Jonathan watched this interaction with something close to awe. The expensive physical therapists had approached Emily's recovery with clinical precision, measuring progress in tiny increments, focusing on specific muscle groups and range of motion exercises. It was professional and thorough, and utterly joyless. Jaden approached it like a game, like a challenge to overcome together. He celebrated every small victory, a shoulder shrug, a hand gesture, a tilt of Emily's head, with genuine enthusiasm. And Emily, responding to his energy, tried harder than she'd tried for any of the professionals. The stories Jaden told during their sessions painted a picture of a life Jonathan could barely imagine. He talked about the politics of sleeping spots at the pier, who controlled which areas, who you had to avoid, who might share their blanket if the night was really cold. He described the fish market characters like they were sitcom personalities: Marcus the gruff but kind fishmonger, Chen who sold the best dumplings, Officer Rodriguez who pretended not to see the street kids as long as they didn't cause trouble. "Don't you have any family?" Emily asked one day. "Like anyone at all?" Jaden shook his head. "Mom died when I was 8. Dad was gone before that. There were some foster situations that didn't work out, and then I just ended up on my own." "That's not fair." "Lots of things aren't fair, but you deal with it, you know." Jaden stood and started his warm-up routine, rolling his shoulders and stretching. "I figure I can either be sad about what I don't have, or I can make the best of what I do have. And what I have is freedom, kind of. And dancing. And now this." He gestured at the garden, at Emily. "This is pretty good." Jonathan noticed that Jaden never complained. Not about hunger, though he clearly arrived famished every day, devouring whatever snacks Maria provided. Not about the cold, though his jacket was inadequate for the chilly evenings. Not about his situation, sleeping in a crate, having nothing, belonging nowhere. He just danced, and made Emily laugh, and slowly, steadily, helped her reconnect with her own body. By the end of the second week, Emily could roll her shoulders independently. She could wave her arms in fluid motions, mimicking some of Jaden's moves. Her posture in the wheelchair had improved, her spine straighter, her core engaged. The physical therapist who came on Tuesday noticed immediately. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it," Dr. Martinez said. "Her muscle tone is improving. Her engagement is better. This is real progress." Jonathan didn't tell her about Jaden. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he worried she'd object, cite concerns about proper therapeutic protocols or something. Maybe he just wanted to keep this thing separate, protected from professional scrutiny. But he did increase Maria's grocery budget, and made sure there were always plenty of snacks available at 4 o'clock. One Thursday afternoon, Jaden arrived with a small portable speaker he'd somehow acquired. "I found this at the pier," he explained. "Some tourist left it behind. I thought we could practice with actual music instead of me just beatboxing. He set it up on the garden table and scrolled through his phone, an ancient model with a cracked screen that probably didn't have service, but it played music, and that was enough. Okay, Miss Emily, today we're going to work on rhythm. I'm going to teach you how to count beats. I know how to count beats. I did ballet for 4 years. Ballet beats are different from hip-hop beats, trust me. For the next hour, Jonathan listened to music drifting up from the garden, pop songs, hip-hop tracks, even some old funk that got both kids laughing. Jaden broke down the rhythms, helped Emily clap on different beats, showed her how the same song could be counted in different ways, and Emily participated, fully engaged, focused, working hard to get it right. Sometimes she got frustrated when her hands wouldn't move fast enough. Sometimes she needed breaks when her arms got tired, but she never gave up, and Jaden never let her. "You've got this," he'd say when she struggled. "Come on, one more time. You were so close." "I can't." "You can. I've seen you do harder things than this. Remember yesterday when you held that position for 30 seconds? This is easier than that." And somehow, with Jaden's encouragement, Emily would try again, and usually succeed. Jonathan found himself thinking about Jaden at odd moments, during business calls, in the middle of meetings, late at night when he couldn't sleep. This kid who had nothing had somehow become essential to his daughter's recovery, essential to their lives. But every evening at 6 o'clock, Jaden would pack up his speaker, thank Maria for the food, and head back to the gate, back to the long walk down the highway, back to Long Beach Pier, and a wooden crate. And every evening Jonathan would watch him go and feel a complex tangle of gratitude and guilt. On Friday of the second week, as Jaden was preparing to leave, Jonathan called down from the balcony. "Jaden, hold on a minute." The boy looked up, suddenly nervous. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, the opposite." Jonathan came down to the garden. "I just wanted to say, thank you, for what you're doing for Emily." Jaden looked confused. "I'm not really doing anything, we're just hanging out." "You're doing more than you know." Jonathan pulled out his wallet. "I'd like to give you something." "No." Jaden stepped back, hands up. "I'm not here for money. I know that, but you're spending 2 hours here every day, and you walk for hours to get here. I want to be here. Emily's my friend." "You don't pay friends." There was something fierce in Jaden's voice, a dignity that surprised Jonathan. This kid who had nothing was refusing money because accepting it would change the nature of what they had. "Okay," Jonathan said quietly, "no money, but Jaden, what you're doing matters. More than you can possibly understand." Jaden's expression softened. "She's getting better. I can see it. She smiled for like 10 minutes straight today." "I know, I saw." They stood there in the fading light, this billionaire and this homeless child, united by their shared concern for a 9-year-old girl in a wheelchair. "Same time tomorrow?" Jaden asked. "Same time tomorrow," Jonathan confirmed. As Jaden headed toward the gate, Emily called out, "Hey Jaden." He turned back. "You're my best friend," Emily said. "You know that, right?" Jaden's grin was bright enough to light the whole garden. "You're my best friend too, Emily." After he'd gone, Jonathan sat with his daughter in the garden, as the sun set over the Pacific. "He's special, isn't he?" Emily said. "He really is, Dad. Can we help him, like more than just letting him come here?" Jonathan had been thinking the same thing. "What did you have in mind?" "I don't know, but it's not fair that he has to sleep outside and go hungry. Maybe we could, I don't know, do something." Jonathan looked at his daughter, his smart, compassionate daughter who was finally thinking about someone other than herself, caring about something beyond her own pain. "Let me think about it," he said. "But yes, sweetheart, I think we can help him." Emily leaned her head against his shoulder, something she hadn't done since before the accident. "Thanks, Dad." Jonathan kissed the top of her head and watched the ocean turn dark. Somewhere out there, Jaden was walking through the night, heading back to an uncertain sleep in a wooden crate. But not for much longer, Jonathan decided. Not if he had anything to say about it. Things were about to change. Dr. Sarah Chen's office occupied the 15th floor of a gleaming medical building in downtown Los Angeles, with views of the city sprawling toward the mountains. Jonathan had been bringing Emily here for months now, following up on her spinal injury, monitoring her progress, or lack thereof. Today felt different. Emily sat in her wheelchair by the window, watching the traffic far below. while Dr. Chen reviewed her chart. The neurologist was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and thorough, with a reputation for being one of the best in her field. She'd been honest with Jonathan from the beginning about Emily's prognosis, possible partial recovery, but no guarantees. Maybe she'd walk again someday. Maybe she wouldn't. Well, Dr. Chen said, looking up from her tablet, I have to say, I'm seeing some changes here that I wasn't expecting. Jonathan leaned forward. Good changes. Very good changes. Dr. Chen rolled her chair closer to Emily. Your muscle tone has improved significantly in your upper body. Your posture is better. But what's really interesting is this. She pulled up a scan on her computer screen. The nerve response testing we did today shows increased activity in pathways that were dormant before. Your brain is sending stronger signals down your spine. Emily's eyes widened. What does that mean? It means you're not just maintaining your current state, you're actually improving. The neural pathways are becoming more active, more responsive. Dr. Chen studied Emily's face. Has something changed in your routine? New therapy, different medication? Emily glanced at her father, then back at the doctor. I've been hanging out with a friend. We dance together, kind of. You dance. He dances. I move my arms and shoulders. He teaches me rhythms and moves I can do from my chair. Dr. Chen's expression shifted to one of interest. How often? Every day. For 2 hours. And how do you feel during these sessions? Happy. Emily said it simply. I feel happy, like alive, I guess. Dr. Chen nodded slowly, then turned to Jonathan. Can I speak with you privately for a moment, Mr. Reed? They stepped into the hallway, leaving Emily with a nurse. Dr. Chen closed the door before speaking. I need to tell you something that might sound unscientific, but I've seen it enough times to believe it's real. She crossed her arms, choosing her words carefully. The mind-body connection in spinal injury recovery is profound. We don't fully understand it yet, but emotional and psychological state can absolutely affect physical healing. You're saying Emily's improvement is because she's happy. I'm saying that positive emotional experiences can activate healing responses in the nervous system. Endorphins, neuroplasticity, reduced cortisol, these things matter. A patient who's engaged, motivated, experiencing joy, they recover differently than a patient who's depressed and withdrawn. Jonathan thought about the 8 months of Emily's silent withdrawal, the therapists working with a child who barely responded, the exercises performed mechanically, without engagement or enthusiasm. For 8 months she was shut down, he said quietly. Completely shut down, and now she's not. Whatever this friendship is, whatever these dance sessions are doing, they're working. Her brain is more active, her body is responding. I can measure it in her nerve conduction tests. Dr. Chen paused. My professional advice, keep doing whatever you're doing. Maintain the physical therapy, of course, but don't stop these dance sessions. They might be the most important therapy she's getting. They returned to the office. Dr. Chen spent another 20 minutes examining Emily, testing reflexes, checking range of motion. As they prepared to leave, she said, Emily, I want you to keep working with your friend, and I want to see you back here in a month. I think we're going to see more good changes. On the drive back to Pacifica Bay, Emily was quiet, processing what the doctor had said. Finally she spoke. Dad, did you hear that? Dr. Chen said, I'm getting better, like actually better. I heard, sweetheart. It's because of Jaden. I know it is. When he's there I don't think about the accident or mom or any of the bad stuff. I just think about trying to do the moves he shows me, or laughing at his stories, or teaching him about ballet positions. Jonathan gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. He's become very important to you, hasn't he? He's my best friend. I know that sounds weird because we've only known each other a couple weeks, but it's true. He makes me want to try harder, to get better, to be strong again. Then I'm glad he found us. Do you think? Emily hesitated. Do you think we could help him more? I hate that he leaves here every day and goes back to sleeping in a box. Jonathan had been thinking about this constantly, about Jaden's dignity in refusing money, about the long walks in darkness, about a 12-year-old kid surviving on the streets with nothing but his ability to make people smile. I have some ideas, Jonathan said carefully, but I need to talk to Jaden first, see what he's comfortable with. You won't scare him off, will you? He's really proud. He won't take charity. I noticed that. I'll be careful, I promise. That evening Jonathan waited in the garden for Jaden's arrival. When the boy appeared at 4 o'clock, Jonathan was sitting at the patio table with lemonade and cookies already set out. "Hey Mr. Reed," Jaden said, immediately looking for Emily. "Where's Emily's resting? She had a doctor's appointment this morning and she's tired. I thought maybe you and I could talk for a bit first." Jaden's expression became guarded. "Did I do something wrong?" "Sit down, Jaden, please." The boy sat, but he looked ready to bolt at any second. Jonathan poured him a glass of lemonade, buying time to figure out how to approach this. "We saw Emily's neurologist today, Dr. Chen." Jaden went very still. "Is Emily okay?" "She's better than okay," Dr. Chen said. "Emily is showing improvement in her nerve function. Real measurable improvement." "That's great. That's really great." She said. "It's because of you. Because of the time you spend with Emily, the dancing, the way you've engaged her and given her motivation to work her body." Jonathan paused. "You're helping my daughter heal, Jaden." The boy looked down at his hands. We're just having fun. That's all. It's more than that. You're giving her something nobody else has been able to give her. Hope, joy, a reason to try." Jonathan leaned forward. "I want to thank you, and I want to talk to you about your situation. Miss Reed, I told you I don't want money. I know, and I respect that, but Jaden, you're 12 years old and you're living on the streets. That's not okay. It's not safe and it's not right. I manage fine, maybe you do, but you shouldn't have to just manage. You should have a home, regular meals, school, the things every kid deserves." Jaden pushed back from the table slightly. "If you're talking about calling social services or putting me in a foster home, I'm not. I'm talking about something different." Jonathan took a breath. "Emily asked me if we could help you, and I've been thinking about how to do that in a way that respects your independence and your dignity. I don't need, just listen, please." Jaden fell silent, but his body was tense, ready to run. "What if you could have a safe place to sleep, a real bed, not a wooden crate, and regular meals, and the chance to go to school, to have a real future beyond just surviving day to day?" Jonathan kept his voice gentle. "I'm not saying you'd have to live here. I know that might feel like too much, but I own other properties. There's a guest house on the estate that's not being used, or I could arrange an apartment in town. Whatever makes you comfortable." "Why would you do that?" "Because you're helping my daughter. Because you're a good kid in a bad situation. Because I can help and it would be wrong not to." Jaden was quiet for a long moment, staring at his lemonade. "And what would you want in return?" "Nothing. Just for you to keep being Emily's friend. Keep coming to dance with her if you want to. But that's it. No obligations beyond that. People don't just give you things for nothing. Some people do, Jaden, when they can and when it's the right thing to do." The boy's eyes were wet, though he blinked rapidly to hide it. "I don't know what to say. You don't have to decide right now. Think about it." "But Jaden," Jonathan waited until the boy met his eyes. "You deserve better than sleeping in a box at the pier. You deserve a chance at a real life. Let me help give you that." Before Jaden could respond, they heard a sound from the house. Emily had wheeled herself to the doorway, her face hopeful. "Please say yes," she called out. "Please, Jaden. You're my best friend and I hate thinking about you being cold and hungry and alone." Jaden looked between them. This billionaire and his daughter, both looking at him with genuine concern, genuine care. After a lifetime of being invisible, of being just another street kid people tried not to see, being seen like this was almost overwhelming. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, I'll try. Whatever you think is best." Emily's face lit up with pure joy. "Really, really. But Mr. Reed," Jaden turned to Jonathan, "I still won't take money from you, and I'm going to pay you back someday for whatever you spend on me. When I'm older and I have a job, I'm going to pay back every cent." "That's a deal," Jonathan said, though he had no intention of ever accepting repayment. "Now how about you go make Emily happy for a couple hours? I'll start making some arrangements." Jaden stood up, still looking a bit stunned, and walked over to Emily. She reached out and grabbed his hand. "Everything's going to be better now," she said, "for both of us." As Jonathan watched them head into the garden together, he felt something he hadn't felt in 8 months. Not just hope, certainty. Things really were going to be better, for all of them. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Jaden had moved into the guest house on the Ocean Crest property. The small cottage had been renovated quickly, new furniture, fresh paint, stocked kitchen. It had been a guest residence before, so it had everything: a bedroom, bathroom, small living area, even a desk for schoolwork. Jaden still seemed dazed by it, sometimes touching the walls like he couldn't quite believe they were real. Jonathan had enrolled him in the local middle school starting next semester. For now a tutor came 3 times a week to help catch him up on the years of education he'd missed. Jaden was a quick learner, hungry for knowledge the way he'd once been hungry for food. But every day at 4 o'clock the academic work stopped. That was dance time. Today Jaden had set up his speaker in the usual spot, and Emily was positioned in her wheelchair on the lawn. They'd developed a comfortable rhythm over the past weeks. Jaden would demonstrate new moves, break them down into components, then help Emily figure out which parts she could do with her upper body. "Okay, so today I want to try something different," Jaden said, scrolling through songs on his phone. "We've been working on arms and shoulders, right? But I think we should try engaging your core more." "My core barely works," Emily said. "It works a little. I've seen you sitting up straighter, and yesterday when you were laughing, your whole torso moved. So it's there, the strength. We just have to wake it up more." He found a song with a strong beat and hit play. "All right, this is going to sound crazy, but hear me out. I want you to try lifting yourself out of the chair. Just a little, like pushing down on the armrests and lifting your butt up even an inch." Emily stared at him. "I can't do that." "How do you know if you haven't tried in weeks? Come on, give it a shot. What's the worst that happens? You can't do it, and we try something else." "Jaden, please, for me," Emily sighed. But she gripped the armrests of her wheelchair. Her face immediately tightened with concentration. She pushed down, arms straining. Nothing happened. "It's not working," she panted. "Try again. Really engage your core. Think about pulling your belly button toward your spine. That's what the physical therapists always say, right?" Emily tried again. Her arms shook with effort. Her face flushed red. She made a small sound of frustration, and then just barely, her body lifted. Maybe half an inch. Maybe less. But definitely lifted. "I felt that," Jaden shouted. "You did it. You actually did it." "I can't hold." Emily dropped back into the chair, breathing hard. "That's okay. You did it for like a second. That's amazing." From the balcony Jonathan had been watching, he came down to the garden quickly, his heart pounding. "Emily, are you all right?" "Dad, I lifted myself. Just for a second, but I did it." Jonathan looked at Jaden, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "She totally did. I saw it." Her whole body came up off the chair. "Sweetheart," that's Jonathan's voice caught. "That's incredible. I want to try again," Emily said, already gripping the armrests once more. "Maybe rest for a minute first," Jaden suggested. That was a lot of work. But Emily wasn't listening. She was focused, determined. She pushed down again, her whole body engaged in the effort. This time Jonathan could clearly see her rise slightly off the seat, her core muscles contracting visibly beneath her shirt. She held it for maybe 2 seconds before dropping back down. "Did you see that, Dad? Did you see?" "I saw." Jonathan was having trouble keeping his voice steady. "You're so strong, Emily. So incredibly strong." They spent the next 30 minutes working on it. Jaden encouraged her between every attempt, celebrating each lift no matter how small. Emily's arms got tired quickly, but she refused to stop. She was driven by something Jonathan hadn't seen in her since before the accident: pure determination. After a particularly good lift that she held for nearly 5 seconds, Emily tried again, immediately. This time, as she pushed up, something shifted in her face. "Wait," she said, freezing in the lifted position, arms shaking. "Wait, wait, wait. What's wrong?" Jonathan moved closer. Dad, I feel my legs." Time seemed to stop. Jaden went completely still. Jonathan dropped to his knees beside the wheelchair. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Tears were streaming down Emily's face now. "I can feel them. Not a lot, but something, like tingles. Like when your foot falls asleep and it's waking up. I can feel my legs, Dad." She lowered herself back into the chair, and her hand moved to her thigh. She touched it, and her face crumpled. "I felt that. I felt my hand touching my leg." Jonathan couldn't hold back his tears anymore. He pulled Emily into his arms, holding her while she sobbed against his shoulder. These weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of hope, of possibility, of something long thought lost beginning to return. Jaden stood nearby, his own eyes wet, looking overwhelmed by what he'd just witnessed. "This is good," Emily kept saying between sobs. "This is good, right, Dad? This means I might walk again." "I don't know, sweetheart, but it means you're healing. It means your body is coming back to you." Jonathan pulled back to look at her face. "We need to call Dr. Chen. Tell her what just happened." "Can I try standing?" Emily asked suddenly, like actually standing, with help. "I don't think, please. I just want to try, just to feel what it's like." Jonathan looked at Jaden, who nodded. Together they positioned themselves on either side of the wheelchair. Jonathan wrapped one arm around Emily's waist while Jaden took her other side. "On 3, Jonathan said, "we're going to lift you up and you tell us the second anything feels wrong or hurts. Understand?" "Understood. 1, 2, 3. They lifted her out of the chair. Her feet touched the ground and Emily's full weight settled onto legs that hadn't supported her in 8 months. Jonathan and Jaden held tight, bearing most of her weight. "How does it feel?" Jonathan asked. "Weird, tingly, like my legs don't quite know what to do." Emily's voice was shaky but excited. "But Dad, I can feel the ground under my feet. I can feel it." They held her upright for maybe 30 seconds before carefully lowering her back into the wheelchair. Emily was laughing and crying at the same time, her face flushed with exertion and joy. "That was amazing," she breathed. "That was the most amazing thing ever." Jaden crouched down beside her, grinning. "You're going to walk again. I know it. You're way too stubborn not to." "You really think so?" "I know so. I've been watching you get stronger every single day. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning." Jonathan stepped away to make a phone call, his hands shaking as he dialed Dr. Chen's office. While he spoke to the nurse, explaining what had happened and requesting an emergency appointment, he watched Emily and Jaden in the garden. They were holding hands, both of them smiling, both of them transformed from who they'd been just weeks ago. Emily, no longer the silent, withdrawn child who stared at nothing, and Jaden, no longer the homeless boy surviving on the streets alone. "Dr. Chen can see us tomorrow morning at 9, Jonathan said, returning to them. "She wants to run some tests." "What if the feeling goes away?" Emily asked, worried now. "What if it was just a fluke?" "Then it was a beautiful fluke." "But Emily, I don't think it was. I think your body is healing. Slowly in its own time, but healing." That evening, after Jaden had gone back to the guest house, Jonathan sat with Emily in her room. She was exhausted but too excited to sleep. "Dad, when I lifted myself today, when I felt my legs, it was like a door opened, like I'd been stuck in a dark room, and suddenly there was light." She looked at him seriously. "None of this would be happening without Jaden. You know that, right?" "I know. He saved me. He really did, just by being himself, by dancing, by making me want to try." Jonathan kissed her forehead. "Then we're going to make sure he never has to worry about sleeping in a wooden crate again. He's family now, sweetheart. If that's what he wants, he's family. I think he wants that. He's just scared to believe it's real. We'll show him it's real. Every day we'll show him." As Jonathan turned out the light and closed Emily's door, he paused in the hallway. Through the window he could see the guest house where Jaden was probably getting ready for bed. A boy who'd had nothing, who'd survived on his wits and his dancing and the occasional kindness of strangers. A boy who'd given them back what they thought they'd lost forever. Jonathan made a silent promise to the universe, to his late wife, to whatever force had brought Jaden into their lives. He would protect this child. He would give him the future he deserved. He would make sure Jaden knew what it meant to be loved and valued and home. Because that's what family did. And Jaden was family now, whether he fully believed it yet or not. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jonathan sat on the terrace with a cup of coffee, watching the waves crash against the cliffs below. He'd been thinking about this conversation all day, planning what to say and how to say it. The door to the guest house opened, and Jaden emerged, wearing new jeans and a hoodie that actually fit. It still seemed to startle the boy sometimes. Wearing clothes that weren't torn or too small, eating meals that he hadn't scrounged or begged for. But he was adjusting, slowly learning to accept that this wasn't temporary, wasn't going to be taken away. "Hey Mr. Reed," Jaden called, walking across the lawn. "Emily said you wanted to talk to me." "I did. Sit down." Jonathan gestured to the chair across from him. "You want anything? Water, soda?" "I'm good thanks." Jaden sat but looked nervous. "Is everything okay?" Did I do something? Everything's fine. Better than fine. Jonathan set down his coffee. I wanted to talk to you about the future, about your plans, your situation, all of it. Oh, Jaden relaxed slightly. Okay, you've been here almost a month now. How are you feeling about it? Jaden struggled to find words. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Having a real place to sleep, enough food, the tutoring, getting to see Emily every day. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, and it'll all have been a dream. It's not a dream, this is real, Jaden. You're safe here, you're welcome here. I know, it's just hard to believe sometimes. Jonathan nodded, understanding. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. What do you want? Long term, I mean. Not just for the next few weeks or months, but for your life. Jaden looked surprised by the question. I don't know, I've never really thought about it. I was always just trying to survive day by day, you know. Planning ahead seemed pointless when I didn't know if I'd have food the next day. Well, you don't have to just survive anymore. So think about it now. If you could have anything, be anything, what would you want? Jaden was quiet for a long moment, watching the ocean. Finally he said, I want to feel like I matter, like I'm not invisible anymore. You matter to Emily, I know, she tells me all the time. Jaden's voice got soft. Nobody ever told me I mattered before. My mom was too messed up to notice I existed half the time. The foster families just wanted the check. On the streets people looked right through me like I wasn't even there. He turned to Jonathan. But when I'm dancing, or when I'm with Emily, I feel seen. I feel like I actually exist. Jonathan felt his chest tighten. You do exist, Jaden. You've always existed. You've always mattered. Some people were just too blind or too cruel to see it. Why do you care? Jaden asked suddenly. I mean, I'm grateful, don't get me wrong, but I don't understand why you've done all this for me. You don't know me, I could be anyone. You want the truth? Yeah, at first I did it for Emily, because you made her happy when nothing else could. You gave me hope that I might get my daughter back. Jonathan leaned forward. But now, I do it for you, because you're a good kid who deserves a real chance, because I have the resources to help, and it would be wrong not to, and because, he paused, because you feel like family now, to both of us. Jaden's eyes went wide. Family, if you want to be. I'm not trying to replace your parents or pretend to be your father, but I am saying that there's a place for you here, permanently, if you want it, not just as Emily's friend, as part of our family. Jaden's voice cracked. I don't know what to say. Why do you dance? Jonathan asked, echoing Emily's question from weeks ago. You told Emily it's because you don't feel invisible. Is that the only reason? Jaden thought about it. No, I dance because it's the only thing I have that's completely mine. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody can take it away. It's just me, pure me. And when I'm dancing, I'm free. I'm not the homeless kid or the foster failure, or the nobody. I'm just Jaden. And Jaden is enough. You've always been enough, Jonathan said quietly. But I understand what you mean, and I don't want to take that away from you. Your independence, your sense of self, your dancing, those are yours. I just want to give you a foundation to build on. Safety, stability, the chance to go to school, to have dreams that aren't about just surviving. What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess up? Then you'll mess up. Everyone does, but it won't change the fact that you have a place here. Jaden wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. Can I ask you something? Anything? Do you ever wish I hadn't shown up that day? Like that things had stayed simple? Jonathan thought about that afternoon weeks ago, coming home to find a strange boy in his garden, making his daughter laugh for the first time in months. The fear he'd felt, the uncertainty, the way his carefully controlled world had suddenly become unpredictable. No, he said firmly, I don't wish that at all. You showing up was the best thing that could have happened to us. You saved Emily, and honestly I think you saved me too. How did I save you? I was drowning. I'd lost my wife and I was losing Emily too, watching her slip further away every day. I had all the money in the world, and it meant nothing because I couldn't help my own daughter. I felt useless, helpless. Jonathan met Jaden's eyes. Then you came along and reminded me that the most important things aren't about money or power or control. They're about connection, about caring for each other. about finding joy in simple moments. I just danced for her. You did more than dance, you saw her, really saw her, not as a tragedy, or a patient, or a broken child, but as a person who needed a friend. You gave her hope without even trying. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The sky was spectacular now, deep purple fading to gold. Mr. Reed, Jaden said eventually, if I stay, if I become part of the family, what happens when Emily gets better? When she doesn't need me anymore? You think we'd send you away? I don't know, maybe I'm only useful as long as she needs help. Jaden, look at me. Jonathan waited until the boy met his eyes. You're not here because you're useful, you're here because you're you, because you matter. Whether Emily walks again tomorrow or never walks again, that doesn't change. You understand? Jaden nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face now. I've never had anyone say things like that to me before. Then it's about time someone did. Jonathan stood and moved to the railing, looking out at the darkening ocean. I'm going to start formal adoption proceedings. If you agree to it, it'll take some time. There's legal stuff to work through since you're technically in state custody, but I have lawyers who can handle it. Adoption, Jaden's voice was barely a whisper. If you want it, no pressure. You can stay here regardless, but adoption would make it official. Legal, would mean you're my son in the eyes of the law. Jonathan glanced back at him. Would mean you'd never have to worry about foster homes or being alone again. Would mean you'd have a real home, a real family, forever. Jaden stood up, walking over to join Jonathan at the railing. For a long moment he just stared at the ocean, processing. Can I think about it? He finally asked. Of course, take all the time you need. It's not that I don't want to, Jaden said quickly. I do, I really do. It's just, it's a lot. I need to make sure it's real. That I'm not going to wake up back in that wooden crate and realize this was all just a really good dream. I understand. Jonathan put a hand on Jaden's shoulder. But Jaden, this is real. I promise you that. That night, after Jaden had gone back to the guest house, Emily wheeled herself out onto the terrace where Jonathan still sat. Did you talk to him? She asked. I did. What did he say? He needs time to think about it. It's a big decision. Emily nodded. He's scared. He's been let down by every adult in his life. It's hard for him to trust that this is permanent. How'd you get so wise? Jonathan smiled at his daughter. I pay attention. She wheeled closer. Dad, thank you for doing this for him, for understanding how important he is. He's important to you, so he's important to me. It's more than that though. He deserves this. He deserves a family who loves him. Jonathan looked at his daughter, this brave, compassionate 9-year-old who'd been through hell, and somehow come out still caring about others. You're right, he does deserve it. And we're going to make sure he gets it. Above them, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the guest house, Jaden was probably lying awake, thinking about everything that had been said, trying to believe that good things could actually last. And here on the terrace, a father and daughter sat together, both of them transformed by a homeless boy, who danced his way into their lives, and reminded them what really mattered. The ocean continued its eternal rhythm below, constant and unchanging. But everything else had changed, and it was only just beginning. The article appeared in the Los Angeles Times on a Wednesday morning. Jonathan was drinking his coffee and checking emails when his phone started buzzing with messages from friends, business associates, even people he hadn't spoken to in years. California billionaire opens home to homeless street performer, read the headline. Below it was a photo. Someone had captured Jaden and Emily in the garden. Jaden mid-dance move while Emily laughed from her wheelchair. Jonathan's stomach dropped. He read quickly through the article. It was mostly factual, if slightly sensationalized. It mentioned Emily's paralysis, Jaden's homelessness, the unusual friendship that had developed, and Jonathan's decision to take Jaden in and pursue adoption. What the article didn't mention, couldn't capture, was the reality of their daily life, the slow progress, the genuine connection, the way Jaden had become essential to their family, not because of some charitable impulse, but because he belonged. Within hours the story had spread. Local news picked it up, then national outlets. By afternoon, Jonathan's phone was ringing constantly, reporters requesting interviews, producers wanting to film a segment, strangers calling to voice opinions. Some of the response was positive. Heartwarming story, beautiful gesture, restores faith in humanity, but plenty wasn't. Jonathan sat in his study, scrolling through social media comments that his assistant had compiled. Many made him angry, some made him sick. Security risk, this billionaire has no idea who this kid really is. Probably a publicity stunt. Rich guy trying to improve his image. Feel bad for that little girl. Her father's bringing a criminal element into her home. The kid's just using them. Once he steals enough, he'll disappear. The really vicious ones were worse. Jonathan stopped reading after the 10th comment speculating about ulterior motives and hidden agendas. His business partner Richard called that afternoon. Jonathan, we need to talk about the publicity. I'm not discussing Jaden's personal life in the media. I'm not saying you should, but some of our investors are concerned. They're worried about association with controversy. Controversy. I took in a homeless child. A homeless child you didn't properly vet, with no background check, no social services involvement, no oversight. Jonathan, I know your heart's in the right place, but from a business perspective, this looks risky. Then they can pull their investments. I'm not sending Jaden away because some investors are uncomfortable. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, maybe be more careful about public appearances. Keep this private for now. After Jonathan hung up, he sat alone in his study, fighting the urge to punch something. These people didn't know Jaden, hadn't seen him refuse money because he wouldn't accept payment for friendship, hadn't watched him encourage Emily through every small victory, hadn't heard him talk about finally feeling like he mattered. They just saw a homeless kid and assumed the worst. That evening, Emily rolled into the study, her face worried. Dad, Jaden won't come out of the guest house. He says he's sick, but I think he saw the news. Jonathan found Jaden sitting on the floor of the guest house living room, his phone beside him, looking miserable. I should leave, Jaden said before Jonathan could speak. I'm ruining things for you. Your business partners are mad. People are saying terrible stuff. I should just go. You're not going anywhere. But Jaden, look at me. Jonathan sat down beside him on the floor. I don't care what strangers on the internet think. I don't care if some investors are uncomfortable. I care about you and Emily. That's it. People are saying I'm using you, that I'm going to steal from you or hurt Emily. Do you plan to do those things? What? No, never. Then their opinions don't matter. Jonathan put a hand on Jaden's shoulder. I know who you are. Emily knows who you are. That's all that matters. Your partner said it's bad for business. Richard worries too much. And even if it were bad for business, so what? You're more important than business. Jaden looked up, his eyes red. Really, you're my son now. Almost officially, and I protect my family. The next day, 3 news vans appeared outside the gates of Ocean Crest Estate. Jonathan ignored them, but when they were still there at 4 o'clock, preventing Jaden from going to the garden for his daily session with Emily, Jonathan made a decision. He called his lawyer and his PR team. Then he went outside to meet the cameras. Mr. Reed, can you comment on your decision to take in a homeless child? Mr. Reed, are you concerned about safety issues? Mr. Reed, what do you say to critics who call this a publicity stunt? Jonathan held up a hand for silence. The reporters quieted, cameras focused on him. I'll make one statement, and then I'd appreciate it if you'd respect my family's privacy. He looked directly at the cameras. 3 months ago, I was watching my daughter slip away from me. She'd been through a terrible trauma, losing her mother and her ability to walk in the same accident. She'd stopped engaging with the world, stopped smiling, laughing, being a child. I tried everything I could think of to help her. The best doctors, the best therapists, everything money could buy. Nothing worked. He paused, making sure they were listening. Then a 12-year-old boy wandered into our garden. He was homeless, hungry, and looking for a quiet place to rest. When he saw my daughter's sadness, he didn't ask for anything. He just started dancing, making her laugh, reminding her that joy was still possible. Jonathan's voice grew firmer. That boy Jaden has done more for my daughter's recovery than months of expensive therapy. He's helped her regain movement, regain hope, regain her will to live. He didn't do it for money, or recognition or any ulterior motive. He did it because he's a kind, compassionate person who saw someone in pain and wanted to help. So yes, I took him in. I gave him a safe place to live, regular meals, the chance to go to school. I'm pursuing adoption because he deserves a family. He deserves stability. He deserves to know what it feels like to be loved and valued. The reporters started shouting questions again, but Jonathan spoke over them. As for my business partners and investors who are concerned, I'll say this once. My daughter's well-being is worth more than any deal, any investment, any amount of money. If you can't understand that, then we have nothing to discuss. He turned to walk back toward the house, then paused, and to the people saying cruel things about a 12-year-old child who's survived more hardship than most adults will ever face, shame on you. Jaden is brave, resilient, and good-hearted. He deserves your admiration, not your suspicion. Jonathan walked back inside and closed the door. The footage went viral. By that evening, the narrative had shifted. New articles appeared. Billionaire defends adopted son against critics. Father prioritizes family over business. The boy who danced his way into a billionaire's heart. The negative comments didn't disappear, but they were drowned out by positive ones. People sharing their own stories of overcoming homelessness, praising Jonathan for choosing his daughter's happiness over public opinion, calling for more compassion toward homeless youth. Emily had watched the whole thing from her wheelchair by the window. When Jonathan came back inside, she was crying. That was perfect, Dad. Just perfect. Jaden emerged from the guest house having watched the coverage on his phone. He walked slowly across the lawn looking overwhelmed. You really meant all that? He asked Jonathan. Every word. Even the part about me being your son. Especially that part. Jaden stood there, this thin 12-year-old boy who'd spent his life being invisible, who'd survived on streets that tried to swallow him, who'd danced for spare change and slept in wooden crates. And now he was being defended on national television by a billionaire who called him son. I don't know how to. Jaden struggled with the words. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, you're family. This is what family does. Emily wheeled herself closer. We protect each other. That's the deal. That night, after the news vans had finally left and the circus had died down, the three of them sat in the garden under the stars. Emily was between Jonathan and Jaden, holding both their hands. I was thinking, Emily said, we should make this official. The three of us. A real family. We are a real family, Jonathan said. I know, but I mean official, like Jaden should legally be my brother. Jaden looked at her, surprised. You want me to be your brother? You already are. In every way that matters. I just think it should be legal too, so nobody can ever say you don't belong. Jonathan felt his eyes getting wet. The adoption papers are already in progress. Once they're final, Jaden will legally be part of this family. My son, your brother. Reed, Jaden said softly. My name would be Jaden Reed, if you want it to be. I do, I really do. Emily squeezed his hand, then it settled. We're officially the Reed family. Dad, me and Jaden. Against the world if we have to be. Against the world, Jonathan agreed. Above them, stars scattered across the California sky, countless and bright. The ocean crashed against the cliffs in its eternal rhythm, and three people brought together by tragedy and chance, and a spontaneous moment of dancing, sat together as a family. The world had watched, the world had judged, the world had opinions, but in the end the only opinions that mattered were theirs, and they chose each other. 6 months later, spring arrived in Pacifica Bay with blooming jacarandas and warm Pacific breezes. The garden at Ocean Crest Estate was alive with color, purple flowers carpeting the lawn, roses climbing the trellises, the ocean sparkling in the morning sun. Emily stood at the edge of the terrace, holding onto the railing with both hands. Actually stood, bearing her own weight on legs that had been paralyzed just months ago. You ready? Jaden asked, positioning himself a few feet away on the lawn. Ready, Emily said, her voice steady despite the nervousness in her eyes. She released the railing. For a moment she swayed, finding her balance. Her legs trembled from the effort. Then slowly, deliberately, she took a step, then another. Her gait wasn't perfect. She had a slight limp, her left leg still weaker than her right. But she was walking. 3 steps. 4, 5. Jaden caught her as she reached him, both of them laughing. You did it, he shouted. 5 steps. That's a new record. My legs are shaking. That's okay, they'll get stronger. Look how far you've come already. Jonathan watched from the terrace, his phone recording the moment. Emily had started taking her first assisted steps 2 months ago. Each week brought new progress, better balance, stronger muscles, more confidence. The doctors were calling it remarkable. Jonathan called it a miracle. But really it was hard work. Hours of physical therapy, Emily pushing herself beyond exhaustion, Jaden encouraging her through every session, making up dances she could practice, turning the grueling work of recovery into something that felt like play. Again, Emily asked, even though she was clearly tired. Let's rest for a bit first, Jaden suggested. We can practice more this afternoon. Emily made her way back to the terrace, walking, not wheeling, and collapsed into a chair. The wheelchair sat nearby, still needed for longer distances and when she got tired. But it was no longer her prison. Jonathan brought out lemonade for both kids. You two are amazing, you know that. Emin's amazing, Jaden corrected. I'm just the cheerleader. You're more than that, Emily said. You're the reason I kept trying when I wanted to give up. Jaden had changed too over these months. He'd gained healthy weight, his clothes fit properly now. No more torn jackets or taped-together shoes. He'd started at Pacifica Bay Middle School in January and was thriving, making friends, joining the dance club. His teachers praised his work ethic and his kindness to other students. But more than the physical changes, he'd lost that haunted look of a kid who expected everything good to disappear. He smiled easier now, laughed louder, believed in tomorrow. The adoption had been finalized in March. Jonathan remembered the day clearly, standing in front of a judge, Jaden beside him in a new suit, Emily in her wheelchair beaming from the front row. The judge had asked Jaden if he understood what adoption meant. It means I have a family, Jaden had answered. A real family that I belong to forever. That's exactly what it means, the judge had said, signing the papers. Jaden read. It was official now, legal, permanent. Maria emerged from the house carrying a tray with sandwiches. Lunch is ready. And before you say you're not hungry, Jaden, I made extra because you're still growing and you need to eat. I was going to say thank you, but okay, Jaden grinned. They ate together on the terrace, talking about Emily's upcoming recital. She was performing a seated ballet routine she'd choreographed herself, and Jaden's dance club competition next month. Normal family conversation. The kind Jonathan had dreamed of during those dark months after the accident. Dad, can we go to the beach this weekend? Emily asked. I want to try walking on sand. That's going to be harder than the lawn, Jonathan warned. I know, but I want to try. Then we'll try. After lunch, Emily went inside to rest while Jaden helped Maria clear the dishes. Jonathan walked down to the garden, looking at the spot where he'd first seen Jaden dancing months ago. The spot where everything had changed. His phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Board meeting Tuesday at 2. You presenting the new development proposal. Jonathan typed back. Can't make it. Emily has physical therapy. You handle it. A year ago he would never have missed a board meeting. Business had consumed his life. Now, Emily's physical therapy was more important. Watching Jaden's school play was more important. Family dinners were more important. The money still came in, the business still thrived, but it wasn't everything anymore. It wasn't even close to the most important thing. That evening, as the sun set over the Pacific, the three of them walked together on the beach below Ocean Crest Estate. Emily moved slowly, leaning on Jaden's arm, her feet sinking into the sand with each careful step. It was exhausting work, but she refused to stop. Look, she said, pausing to catch her breath. I'm walking on the beach, actually walking. You're incredible. Jonathan said. We're all incredible, she corrected. We survived the worst thing ever and we came out okay, better than okay. They continued along the shoreline, waves washing over their feet. Jaden had kicked off his shoes, splashing in the shallow water, occasionally doing a spin or a jump just because he could. He still danced everywhere he went, in the school hallways, at the grocery store, in the garden. It was his language, his joy, his way of celebrating being alive. Dad, Emily said after a while, do you think Mom would be happy about how things turned out? Jonathan thought about Sarah, about how much she'd loved their daughter, about how devastated she'd be to know Emily had been paralyzed, but also about how proud she'd be of Emily's strength, her recovery, her compassion for Jaden. I think she'd be very happy, Jonathan said. She'd love Jaden, she'd be so proud of you. And she'd probably tell me I'm doing okay, even though I'm still figuring this out. You're doing great, Dad. We all are. As darkness fell, they made their way back up the cliff path to Ocean Crest Estate. The house glowed warmly against the night sky, windows lit from within, welcoming them home. Inside, Maria had set up a movie in the theater room, a comedy Jaden had wanted to see. They settled into the plush seats with popcorn and blankets, Emily between Jonathan and Jaden, all of them comfortable in the easy intimacy of family. Halfway through the movie, Jonathan looked over and saw that Emily had fallen asleep against Jaden's shoulder. Jaden noticed too, and carefully adjusted the blanket around her, then gave Jonathan a smile that said everything's okay, let her sleep. This, Jonathan thought, this moment right here, this is what it's all about, not the mansion or the money or the business empire, not the accolades or achievements or the respect of peers, just this. A quiet evening with his kids, watching a silly movie, nobody needing to be anywhere else or do anything else, just being together, just being family. After the movie ended and Emily had woken up, Jaden helped her upstairs to bed while Jonathan turned off the lights in the theater. He could hear them talking in the hallway, Jaden making Emily laugh with some story about school. When Jonathan came upstairs, he found Jaden standing in the hallway looking at the wall of family photos. Maria had added new ones over the months, pictures of the three of them at the beach, at Emily's doctor appointments showing her progress, at Jaden's school events, just candid shots from around the house. There was one from the adoption day, Jonathan and Jaden in front of the courthouse, both grinning, the official papers in hand. I still can't believe this is my life sometimes, Jaden said softly. Believe it, this is real. You're my son. Emily's your sister. This is your home. I know, I do know. It's just, Jaden touched the adoption photo gently. A year ago I was sleeping in a wooden crate and dancing for spare change. Now I'm Jaden Reed. I have a family, I have a bedroom, and enough food and people who care about me. It's like I'm living someone else's life. No, this is your life. You earned it. I didn't earn it. I just danced in a garden. You did more than that. You brought light into the darkest time of our lives. You reminded us what joy looked like. You gave Emily a reason to fight. Jonathan put his hand on Jaden's shoulder. You saved us, both of us. Jaden leaned against Jonathan's side, and Jonathan wrapped an arm around him. They stood there quietly, looking at the photos of their rebuilt family. I love you guys, Jaden said. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. You and Emily, you're everything. We love you too, son. From her bedroom, Emily called out, Jaden, come tell me good night. Jaden grinned and headed to her room. Jonathan listened to their conversation through the open door. Emily making Jaden promise to help her practice walking tomorrow. Jaden teasing her about her crush on some boy at school, both of them laughing. Siblings, real siblings, in every way that mattered. Jonathan walked to his own bedroom and stood at the window, looking out at the ocean. The same view he'd stared at during those terrible months after Sarah's death and Emily's paralysis. The same water, the same cliffs, the same stars. But everything else had changed. He'd been given a gift he didn't deserve, a second chance at family, at fatherhood, at finding meaning beyond business success. And it had come in the form of a homeless boy who danced. The miracle hadn't been money or medicine or anything Jonathan could control. The miracle had been human connection. Compassion, a child seeing another child's pain and wanting to help, asking for nothing in return. That's what saved them. That's what would always save them. Love, family, being there for each other in the darkness until the light returned. Jonathan sent a silent thank you to whatever force had brought Jaden to their garden that day. Then he turned from the window and went to check on his kids one more time before bed. Emily was already asleep, her blankets tangled around her, peaceful and whole. Jaden was in his own room, not a wooden crate, not a foster home, but his own space in their family home, reading a book for school. Night, Dad, he called when he saw Jonathan in the doorway. Night, Jaden, sleep well, you too. Jonathan closed the door gently and walked down the hallway of Ocean Crest Estate. The house that had felt so empty was now full again. Not with stuff or achievements or trophies, but with laughter and conversation and the comfortable chaos of family life. Tomorrow Emily would practice walking. Jaden would go to school. Jonathan would handle some business calls but would make sure to be home by 4 for their family time in the garden. They'd have dinner together, maybe watch another movie, maybe just sit on the terrace talking while the sun set. Normal life. Beautiful, ordinary, precious normal life. The kind of life money couldn't buy. The kind of life that came from opening your heart to an unlikely stranger who turned out to be exactly who you needed. The kind of life that reminded you, every single day, what really mattered. As Jonathan settled into bed, he realized he hadn't felt this kind of peace since before Sarah died. It was different now, marked by loss, tempered by hardship, earned through struggle, but it was real. And it was theirs, and that was more than enough. Outside, the ocean continued its eternal rhythm. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, and in Ocean Crest Estate, a family slept, a billionaire father, a recovering daughter, and a boy who danced his way from homelessness into belonging. 3 broken people who'd somehow built something whole, a family the American way. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. Not what any of them had expected, but exactly what they all needed. And in the morning they'd wake up and do it all again, together.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.